Hey there guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on this news application, and as you can see this is the news application right here. Let's just make this a tad bit smaller. Let's minimize this so you can see the whole thing. So here we have a nav, we have the news um, logo. It just says news for right now. We have a search input field. This is the current hero page. As you can see, if I hit next, something else comes up. So it's a live API call, and every time I hit this button, the next image flips up. The next article comes up from the news API website. So here we also have three tabs. We have business, sports, and science. This is the ones I picked. You don't necessarily have to pick these ones. I just picked them because they're the ones that corresponded to me. So business, sports, science, we're going to be using Material UI to get these tabs, to put these tabs on here. All this is fully responsive also. As you can see, you can also, there's a slight animation to it. You can click on any of them and it takes you right to the actual website that the article comes from. Let's close out of that. Everything here is also fully responsive. So if we activate a mobile view, as you can see, this is a smaller screen. Everything fits in there. There's no overlap or anything like that. It works perfectly fine. The search icon also works. Let's close out of this. The search input field also works. So if we say PlayStation, for example, and we search that, everything comes up the same way. It's right now it's limited to 21 articles per page. That's what I set it to. If we look at this in mobile view also, what just happened? Give me 1 second. 1 second. Okay, so if we say PlayStation, we search that, and then let's use just inspect because it's acting funny. But yeah, we do that. Everything is fully responsive, as you can see. No overlap, no glitch, nothing. So we can go to a small screen. There you go. It's all there. We also made the nav fixed onto the top point, onto the top. So there we go. So let's get right into it. So we're gonna be using on the client side, we're gonna be using Axios, React Router DOM, Material UI, and Tailwind to code up this project. And then on the server side, we're going to be using Axios, Body Parser, Cores.env, Express, and Nodebond. So those are the main dependencies we're going to be using for this app. And we're getting all this API. We're calling this API from newsapi.org. I'm just going to say /docs. There you go. So I'm signed in and my credentials are going to be on it if I just go right to newsapi.org. But basically just go to newsapi.org and create an account. It's going to have you sign in. It's going to give you an API key, and that's what's going to let you basically do all this. Now, if you have another API source for news, you might be able to follow this because it's pretty much the basic concept behind it. I don't know if it's the exact same method you can apply to it, but the basic concept of calling an API is what's going to be used, and calling an API from the backend and posting to the backend. Those are the two methods that are pretty much going to be used. So let's get right into it. Okay, so now we're on our code editor. I use VS Code, and what we're gonna do is just gonna make this a simple method of creating a directory. We're gonna make use of this method. So I'm gonna say make directory, make dir news. I say news test because I already have my original, but you guys could call it whatever you want. You can also go through your own process. I just like doing it this way on the console, and then I'm going to cd into news test. I'll clear this out, and then I'm going to say within this, I'm going to create a server folder. So I'm going to say make directory server, sure we spawn that right. CD into server. And for people who don't understand what I'm doing, my earlier videos like breaks everything I'm doing down. Some of this stuff, by the way, I'm just gonna go through pretty quickly because I want to believe you guys already understand what it is I'm doing on the basic level. The more intermediate stuff, I'm gonna explain a little bit more in depth on, touch more in depth on. But the easier concept, like using a console or things like that, that is something I'm not gonna expound on. You can find those in my other videos when I'm creating a project. On my other ones, I went into depth with all of them. So here, we're gonna say npm init. Oh, clear that. And we're just gonna enter, clear. And then here we're gonna say npx create React app. And no, I don't know if I already said this, but oh, sorry. npx create React app, and we're gonna call this client. Okay, and while that's installed, I'm just gonna explain what we're doing. So we're creating a backend and a front end component to this project. This is gonna be made with React.js and Node.js. There's no database being used. Everything's just going to be via API calls to newsapi.org. So that's pretty much all we're doing. We're just setting up the front end and the back end at this point. During the course of this video, we're going to be doing a lot of bouncing back between the server side and the client side, server side, client side, just so we can see exactly what we're doing when we're doing it. So we can see what we're doing when we do the back end. We're going to do the front end part to it, just so it's easier to understand and digest. So let's get into this. Let's just open it here. Use test and open this. Cool. All right, so clear. Now we can open both. So here we have server, CD into it, CD into client, clear, clear. And now what are we doing? Okay, so we did that. Now on the client side, on the server side, we're going to be installing, like I said, Axios, body parser, cores, .env, express, and nodemon. So here we go. We can do that all on one line. So parser, cores, .env, express, and nodemon. Okay, and on the client side, we're going to be installing Axios, React, router, DOM, and tail. Let's do that first, and then we get the other packages by doing. Let's just come here, and we can go to Tailwind CSS, get started. So copy that, and we're installing Tailwind at this point. There we go. And then, so yeah, so in order to, if you don't know how to do this, in order to do so, you go onto my other projects, and I break everything down, making it easier to like understand what I'm doing. But I'm just gonna assume we know what we're doing here and keep on going, because this might take us a tad bit longer. But you're also welcome to follow along. I'm just not gonna explain in depth what's going on. So text.css, voila, and run start. Okay. So the React.js portion is working. For this, clear. Let's see if our dependencies got installed. Package.json. Yep, that's everything we need. Now we just say index.js. Because we have nodemon, let's go straight back in here. I'm just going to say start. Say nodemon index.js. So now, if I come in here, say const express require express. and then I say const app equals express. Now we can say app.listen. We're just starting a server up here. .listen. Let's create the port. Let's say 5000. Const host name. We're gonna say local host. So we're gonna be running this on localhost 5000. So go port first. Host name. And console.log. Let's use backticks the console. The server is running on local host name and the port. So now if we start the server, yep, it's gonna tell us the server is running on localhost 5000, which is correct. And now let's just configure the front end part. So the front end part, we don't need this. We do not need these. We do not need this at all. And we don't need this too. Okay, so if we come in index.js, we just got to take this out. Remove web vitals. Next, package.json. App.js. We don't need this. And we don't need anything here. Okay, and everything should work. Now let's see if Tailwind is active. So if we say h1 hello world, and we say class name text white, yep, that works perfectly. So let's just take this back out, and voila, we're done. So it does work. Now what we're gonna be doing is, let's just close out of all of this. Sorry guys, I'm using one screen, so I don't have the privilege of like going between two monitors, so everything's gonna be condensed a bit. So let's just open this bigger, index.js, and now we're just gonna basically require all the dependencies that we installed just to make this faster. So here we want to say require .env .config. I just like putting this first just so nothing, so we don't forget it, because it's something that's easily forgotten. Let's see, new file .env. Oh, sorry. Rename .env. So where is it? What just happened? .env. Okay, got it. All right, that was weird. And now I also want to put in .get ignore, and then put this .env within get ignore, and that's just so our credentials don't get pushed to through to GitHub whenever we create our repository or push our code into the GitHub repository. So let's see .env. So we're done with that, and we're done with this for right now. And then what we want to do is, so what else did we have? This, and then we had Express, Node, Mon. We had cores, so we can put cores right here. Require const cores equals require cores. And for you guys that don't remember, or maybe if you just forgot or you don't know, cores is cross origin research, cross origin resource sharing. So that enables the front end to properly proxy with the back end. So so that information could be diverged. They could be shared with each other. So let's see. Now we can say app.use. So we're just going to use it as a middleware here. And we're doing all this just to make things easier. So that way we don't have to keep coming back to it. Cores. Oh. So we just do all this now. We know we're going to be using these. That's why we're doing this now. Body parser. Oh, so we also need body parser. Const config. I'm just going to put body parser here. Const body parser and require body parser. Cool. So now we can say app.use body parser .url encoded. We're going to say extended, and we're going to say extended is false. Okay. And then now we're going to say app.use body parser.json. Cool. So this is pretty much the setup. So this is how we use body parser here. I think you can also say express.json, and that kind of like eliminates all of this, but this is the method I like to use. So using core is body parser.json, and that is pretty much it. So now let's go back to the front end, and let's see. Actually, let's not. So let's just get into the actual process. So we have all this now, and we know we have our middleware set up. We've required all our dependencies, everything we need so far. So now let's just go do our work in the route section. So let's create a folder called routes. And once this is active, you can understand exactly why we're doing this. It's a method of not having everything clumped up together. And this route is going to be for our hero page. So we're just going to say hero.js. And in here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say const express is equal to require express. And we're going to say const, and then we're going to say hero route. Let's just call it hero route. Const hero route is equal to express dot router and the function. So we're doing that, and then we're going to const axios is equal to express dot is equal to require axios, because we do need that. That's how we're going to be calling that's what we're going to be using to call the API. And then we're going to be requiring .env again. And remember, this is still JavaScript, and everything is read from top to bottom. So just keep that in mind when you're doing stuff, because if one of this is out of whack, it might say it might throw an error and break the server, or just not work. So always keep that in mind, rather than like having to go to Stack Overflow to figure out something that's just basically maybe this was supposed to be number 3 and this was supposed to be number 4. It saves you a lot of headache if you have that in the back of your mind. So now we're going to say module. We want to export this. Now exports is equal to, and we're going to say hero route. So we're exporting this for hero route, and coming back to this index.js, and we're going to require it here, and we're just going to say hero page, and we're going to require that folder, that file, which is routes/hero, and then we're going to use it as a middleware. So app.use, and we're going to say path. So the path is going to be just the regular path, localhost 5000, and then we're going to say hero page. So now all our setup is basically done. So if you come here, what we want to do now to get this hero page is So hero, what we want to do now is call this API. So we're going to scroll down and we're going to go to top headlines, because if you look over here, these are the top. I use the top headlines, I randomize through it, and every time I hit next, the next top headline comes up. So it's what the criteria, the parameter I used was, well, if we come down here, just top headlines, and I believe it's just like this would be general or something like that. Let's see. Um, Yeah, so the endpoint, so News API has two endpoints. So the endpoint was top headlines, and it returns breaking news headlines for countries, categories, and single publishers. So the parameters would be things like the countries, the categories, and the single publisher. However, the endpoint we're going to be using is top headlines. Now, you guys can basically do whatever you want with your newsapi.org key, or use the documentation however you see fit. I chose to use top headlines. You can use everything, and it'll tell it says search every article published by over 80,000 different sources, large and small, in the last 5 years. So this is for news analysis and article discovery. And whereas the one I used is perfectly used with news tickers, or anywhere you want to use live up-to-date news headlines. That's the one that catches my fancy. That's the one I want to use. So here it's you can also use sources. So there's a minor endpoint that can be used to receive a small subset of publishers, and that's sources. So you can get information including name, description, and categories about the most notable sources available for obtaining top headlines from. However, there are what's the word I'm looking for? There are let me see if they have it here before I say something. Okay, so they are restrictions. So note, you can't mix this parameter, the source parameter, with the country or category parameter. So there are restrictions within how you can use several endpoints. Well, so that's pretty much it. So let's just get back into the. I just thought it would be nice to explain a little further the documentation and what I'm doing with it before like actually coding it up. So as you can see here, it says this is what we're gonna get. So I'm just gonna use this. I'm not gonna scroll through because the rest of my API keys there. So I'm just gonna say we're gonna use this. So now we're just gonna copy all the way up until the endpoint before the query. I'm gonna come here. So we're just gonna keep that copied. But here, what we want to do is say hero route, because remember, that's what we're saying express.router is. Hero route, and we're going to say we're using the localhost 5000 route, because if you come back here, you can see the route we're using is just this. Okay, so it's going to crash because I saved this, but we'll just keep going. Request, response, and we're going to say constant, and we're going to call this hero data. Yeah, let's just say hero data is equal to let's just remember to put a sync here, because we're going to be using Axios, and this is an asynchronous function. So await Axios.get, and we're going to be getting, now we're going to copy that in, and as you can see, the country is a category here, is a parameter here. So one of the parameters is country. So whatever country you're in, you can put the 2-letter ISO code for it. I'm in the US, so I'm just going to keep it as country US. And then I'm going to say an API key, and just copy up that part and put it right there. API key. So here, we're just going to make this backticks, just because we're going to be adding external information to it. Is this, so we're going to keep it as this right now. So what we want to do for this API key is come into a .env, and in .env I'm going to call my API key. I'm going to name it as API underscore key. You don't need a constant to make this a variable. This is just a .env file. So API key is enough, or you can name it whatever you want. Just you don't have to put a constant in front of it. Just keep it as this or API, however you want to write it. You don't even have to name it API key. You name it whatever. But whatever you do, you have to make sure it's equal to the API key that was given to you by newsapi.org. So I'm not going to show you mine. I'm just going to skip to the next part just so I don't give away my API key, and we'll catch you on the fast forward to the next part. Okay, so now that that's done, just a quick heads up, or I guess a tip. What I like to do is when I put my API key within the .env, I do like to put it in between two backticks, just like I did here. That's the rule I like to follow, just because it's easier to like extrapolate, even when we like render it, rather than just like having to worry about putting stuff as strings, or because sometimes there's errors that come with that. I just like to put it as backticks, but to each their own. So API key is equal to, and I named mine. Oh, so let's just bring it in here. I'm going to say const. So you just want to make sure this required.env.config is above whatever the API key is. So I'm just going to name it API key also, and say, because now we're going to be getting the data from .env. So the way to go about it is say process.env. I called mine API key, so we're just going to leave it that way. So now const API key is equal to whatever the API key I stored in there. This is the process we're getting. Just make sure this required.env is above const API key. And now we can just throw it in there and call it API key. And that's pretty much all I did. I didn't use any other parameter. I wasn't searching for any. I didn't use any of this. Page size, we can add that. The maximum amount is the 20 is the default, 100 is the maximum amount. I'm actually going to use page size because I requested 21 just so I can have a good split, a good 3x3 split. I mean, 3 row split, I guess you can say, a 3 column split. So let's go back and say API key, but we're going to add it here, and page size is equal to, and we're going to call it, oh, actually, we don't call it anything, we just say 21. So that's the page size. We're doing something that's making this crash. What is it? Okay, so I see what we did wrong. So here I said hero route. It's supposed to be .get. So that was my bad. .get, and that should work. Yep. So we're getting the information. So it's hero route.get, and then that. Forgot. I don't know how I missed that. Okay. So we're doing that, and now we're gonna say console.log hero data. And in order to know why we're saying .data, the quickest method of the quickest way to explain it is just when we when we get hero data, it returns to us a data as a promise, and that's the data. So that's the data we get back. It just happened to be, it's called .data. So that's the data we get back. For more in-depth like explanation, like I always say, it's in my other videos, so it's that way we're not spending too much time on this. So we can console log that. We can also res.send. We should also res.send hero data.data. So we console log it and send it. So now if I go to localhost 5000, yep, this is all the information. So now we bounce back to the front end. So come back to the front end here, and we're going to make a components folder. And we're going to call this one the hero component, so the hero JSX. And we're going to say RFCE. And for those of you who don't understand the RAFCE, it's basically a shortcut to getting all this stuff there, to getting all this information without having to type it all in, and you get it from the extensions folder right here, the extension file here. So basically, like I always say, if you go to other videos, it expounds greatly on those. But for right now, let's just keep chugging on. So now we have this hero, and what we want to do is we want to come to app.js and import it right here. I'm just going to stick it up. Let's just do this. So it imports. Yep, there you go. And it should be here, so whatever we type into hero here should show up. Hello world. Yep, there it is. Okay, so now we know that's been formatted correctly. So here we kind of want to do the same thing we did in the back, except here we're going to be getting it. We're going to be getting information from here rather than from directly from news the newsapi.org. We're getting it directly from localhost 5000. So how do we go about that? Here we go. So first, what we want to do is come over here and say const. We're going to be using state. So const. We're going to say hero info set hero info set hero info, and we're going to say use state. But the use, we're going to be saying we're going to store it within, or we're getting the data as an array of objects. So that's what it's being stored as. So it's being stored as an array of objects. And if you come over here, where is it? Localhost here, as you can see, this is an array of objects, and we're getting the information from here. So we're going to have to store it as an array of objects. And for those of you who don't understand what use state is, basically it's just the ability to hold on to some data. It's temporarily. So you hold on to the data, and whichever, then in this case, the data we're holding on to is what we're getting from here. So for a more in-depth explanation, like I said before, check my other videos out. I think the Marvel one is the most like in-depth explanation. The weather one does have it also, so you can just go ahead and check those. This is a pretty comprehensive project, so I'm just trying to get through it and fly through it. Let's see. Okay, so const here. So we have to import this use state. So import use state. Cool. So what we also have to do is use effect, because we're going to be using something called use effect, and it's also in the. I'm actually going to run through it. So what use effect does. So now what we're going to say is we have this. What we want to do now is fetch the data. So we can come here. Let's go back to it. So we come here and we can say const fetch. We're going to call this variable fetch data, and it's going to be a sync function. I'm going to say try. We're going to use the try and catch, and for catch we're just going to say console.log. We're going to console.log error. For the try, we're going to call it constant hero data is equal to await. And then we're going to say axios dot get, but we have to import axios. So import axios from axios. Remember, we installed this as dependency. So dot get, and we're going to say axios. Oh, we already said dot get axios, and we're getting it from localhost 5000 over here. So HTTP, remember not to put an S, just HTTP to backslashes localhost 5000. Cool. So now if we console.log hero data dot data, right now if you go to localhost 3000, nothing's gonna work. Why? Because we didn't return this function. So here's the funny part. If we return this function right now, it's gonna be continuous, meaning it's gonna keep requesting. If you go to network, it's gonna keep requesting that the document just continuously in a loop. We don't want to do that because one, that's not how we do it, and two, I don't want to risk showing you that example right now because if you did read the documentation when you signed up for the newsapi.org, part of the documentation for the free for the free for the free account says you only get 1,000 requests, I believe, in a day or something like that. So if I show you all that right now, it's going to take me a while to run through this project because I'm going to have to limit myself on how many times I can use the API call. So just take my word for it to say, or you can try it by yourself. Just remember to basically close it unless it's just going to keep on requesting, and it could crash your server. So if I return, if I return this fetch data right here, if I just said fetch data and this, if I save that, this is just going to go on a continuous loop requesting that information. So I'm not going to save that. What I can do is run this fetch data within something called useEffect, because useEffect can have a dependency array that is going to fire based on the dependency you give it. So that sounded weird, but once I show it to you, it would make more sense. So we're going to put fetch data in here. And right now, just like this, if I did this, it would do the exact same thing that I said this would do. Why? Because this isn't dependent on anything. This useEffect is not currently dependent on anything, but just once this fetch data is there, just keep running, just keep running, just keep running, just keep running it. But if we give it a dependency array like such, so now if I save this, as you can see, it didn't request more than it needed to. This just means if this dependency array is there, that means our call is dependent on fetch data. Meaning, for example, let me show you an example. So this article here is what we have currently. Now, if I create a button like next, and I say the onClick function for this button is equal to fetch data, we just gave this a dependency. We just declared it as a dependency. So so this fetch data, this useEffect will fire depending on how many times you press this button. So now if I press this button, once again, I'm not going to press, actually, that's fine. I'm just going to press this button. If I I think we called it one too many times. Okay, so we've currently exhausted our use of the API. Oh, actually, no, we haven't. I thought we did. So it's just, I guess it just took a long time to load. So as you can see, if I hit next, yep, it still works. So if I hit next, something else happens. And that's because this useEffect in this situation is dependent on firing based on me clicking this next button. So in this situation, this fetch data is dependent on how many times this useEffect loads. So, and this useEffect is only going to load once when I open up the page or when the page is refreshed. So whenever the page is called or the page is refreshed or you open the page, this is going to be called. That's all this fetch data is dependent on currently. So now if I go to localhost 3000, as you can see, if I go to console, we only have this, and that's because we only fired it once. So now if I go here, this is what we get as the data, just data. So hero info, is that what I called it? Hero data dot data. So the dot data part is just this part. Now if I open this up, you can see the first thing we get is articles, and right now there's 21 articles. Well, 20 articles because it starts from 0. So there's actually 21 actually. Yeah, it'll be 21 articles, but because it's an array, it starts from 0. So there's 21 list. There's a list of 21 articles. So, but remember, array starts with 0, so it's actually 21. So now, if I get this article and I come here to the first to array 0, as you can see, the author is Carla Britti. The content is this. The source is blah. The title is blah, blah, blah. The URL is blah, blah, blah. The URL to image is this. So I say that to say, if I wanted to do this, where I can click a button and it just goes to a random thing, there's no way I'm just going to loop through all of this just to get one article. It just logically makes no sense, actually. I can't just put it on a constant loop and say, oh, okay, just loop through and give me this, give me that, give me this. What we can do is we can come in here into articles and we can say we can randomize all the articles they are, and it's just going to give us what we want. So we're going to randomize 0, 1, 2, 3 all the way to 20. We're just going to randomize all this, everything in the array, and whatever it lands on when we call on it is it's the data it's going to provide us. So for example, if we randomize from 0 to 5 and I call the array and I call the API, 2 can come out, and the information from 2 is what we use. The information from 1 is what we use. The information from 3 is what we use. That's what I'm doing here. So let's do that here now. So if I come here and I say, so the process of doing that would be hero.data.articles. So it would be .articles, and then rather than saying array number 0, array number 1, array number 2, we're going to use the math function, the math floor function. It's the JavaScript math.floor object. And it's going to say math.floor and math.random. I believe math is capitalized here too. Math.random and times hero data dot articles dot length articles dot length -1. Okay, so what we're saying is math.floor, I believe it's just it's rounding down to the nearest integer. That's what I believe math.floor does. Let's be sure. So math.floor rounds down and returns the largest integer less than or equal to a given number. So pretty much it's rounding down. So we have that, and then we have math.random, and it pretty much gives you a random number between 0 and whatever it is you gave it, and 1 less than whatever it is you gave it. So let's give an example here. So so here math.floor, that's rounding down, and then math.random times 10. So it's giving you a random integer rounded down from 0 to 9. So it's going to include 0, exclude 10. So it always includes the first number, but excludes the last one. So it's going to go all the way, it's going to randomize all the way till 9, not 10. Till 9. It's not going to include 10. And for here, this is 11, so the same thing, but it's going to include 10, not 11. So it's going to be from 0 to 10. So that's pretty much the gist of that. And then if we come back, so we're doing that, and this is the criteria of what it's going to be doing. So it's going to be doing .length. .length here is, so the length is 21. And remember, we have an array. Let's just do this. We have an array of 21. So .length would be 21, and -1 would be 20. So we're basically going through and randomizing up until, like, we can just say .length. That's fine too. That works. Don't have to say -1. I just chose to say -1. So .length means the length would be 21, and it's not going to include the 21. It's just going to go 0 to 20. But I used it. I'm guessing there's a reason I used -1. I'm not, that's what I used in my original. So we're just going to keep it like that. For some reason, I can't think of why I did that, but that's fine. It doesn't really hurt. Like, it's one less, even if it's not that big of a deal. So, and the reason I say it's not that big of a deal is because no one's sitting here clicking next 21 times. Like, that's pretty odd. So that doesn't matter. But if you put dot length, I guess that shouldn't matter either. Let's see. And if I'm wrong, put it in the comment section. I doubt it. I doubt I'm wrong in this situation, but everyone's here to learn. So now what we can do, or what we do, is say, remember we have this use state, right? So we want to set the use state. So set hero info, and we're just going to take all of this again. We're just going to take everything within console log because that's what we're going to use regardless. Okay, let's just do this. See. Let's do that. So now we're holding all this info. Everything we did here, we're just holding it. And when we want to use it, we're going to say, I believe it, where is it? Okay. We're going to say hero info. We're going to use this to use it. So now let's try this now. Let's say h1 tag. Let's put this within the h1 tag, right? And we're going to say hero info dot author, right? So as you can see, the first author is Carla Britti, but that's most likely not what's going to show up here. So dot author, right? But also we have to put a question mark here, because what if the author does not exist? What if this criteria of author is just null? As you can see, you see that some are null. So if it's null and this question mark is in there, it's just gonna break. So it's not gonna work anymore. The thing's just gonna break. So, but if we do it this way, if there's no author, it just skips past it. It returns nothing. It just skips it. So as you can see, Carla Britti didn't come out first. This came out first. And if we look for it here, let's see, what was it? Cherry, Cheri. Okay, I guess I can't find it, but pretty much you get the idea. So do that again. Okay, so now it shows you the source. So it's giving you the source and where it's coming from. Al-Jazari. Wait, why can't I find the name? Author. Oh, what did we use? We used author, right? That's weird. Oh, okay, it's just one behind. So author here is Al-Jazari. So basically, you get the idea. It's randomized. So everything we look for now is randomized. So that should give you an idea of what's going on here. Now we're randomizing the images. That's pretty much what's going on. So if we come here, now we can say image source is equal to what do we call it? Hero info dot, I believe it's URL to image. I believe that's what it's called. I might be wrong. Let's see if there's an error. No, there's not. So as you can see, it's saying reporting from New York. So that is some picture. That is a picture for some article. And then if I see, as I said, some don't have images, so I'm gonna have to use the question mark. See? So now here's another image, and here's another image, and here's another image, and here's another image. So I'm not gonna keep calling it because there's an amount of times we can request. There's a request restriction. So let's just keep going. There's a request limit. So that's the basic idea. So that's what we're doing. Now, we have this, but let me check my source. So what we're gonna do is use let's see, hero.jsx. Okay, so what we're gonna do is use the CSS to get this info to make this look like my other one. So let's just take this real fast and copy it, because I want to make sure the CSS is exactly the same. So that way, and then what we, yep. So I'm just gonna, and I can do this from like scratch, but it wouldn't, I might forget to do one or two things in the CSS department, and it might not look just like we had it in my original. So what we want to do is that, and then let's just do this also. Oh, okay, so we got to put everything within this. Cool. Now nothing should show up. So the reason I'm doing this, I'm gonna do this also, is just so we don't keep calling the API. Hero.js 911. Okay, so gotcha. Yeah, I just don't want to keep calling the API so we don't exhaust it, the exhausting amount of requests we have. So what we can do is say, we're just, okay, so we come here. So now we can see the CSS. So I'm gonna just explain the CSS, and then we're gonna go back into like what it looks like. Then we're gonna be able to call it just once and see what it looks like. So we're gonna say class name for the whole div is width full. We're gonna give it a full width, but however, that's gonna be for mobile. So as you can see, when it was smaller, and when the image popped up, it only took a portion of the screen, and that's because this is on mobile. But in on our larger screens, we wanted to take the whole screen of a hero page, seeing how uh, it's a hero page, and it's a banner image. So we're gonna do that, and then for height, once again, we're gonna say for height, we're just gonna make everything 40 view height, and this is gonna be for everything. So for the width, we're gonna, oh, sorry. For the height, we're gonna say 100 view height for the larger screens, and then the width is full for the whole thing. So the whole thing's gonna take up the full width of the screen. And then for a medium screen, I mean for a small screen, we're gonna say height is equal to 50 view height. So it's gonna be capped out at 50. So everything's gonna look uniform, rather than like one image be smaller than the other and one image be bigger than the other. So we're just gonna have a consistent height for everything. The width, however, is just going to be full. We always want a full width, only if like we don't, I guess. But for the majority of the times, you're going to want a full width. Okay, so that's what we have for the whole div, like for the original, for the main div. And now everything within it, we can now like specify other stuff for it. So class name, let's just do this. We're going to say for this one, and this is going to be for the image. So this is just for the div. So this one's going to be particularly for the image. For the image, we're going to say for a medium size screen and up, it's going to be 100 view width. So width is full, pretty much. But we want to just make sure, because some of the images don't have a full width. Some are just like, some are not the standard for a full size image. So we want to make sure we give it a criteria saying the width is going to be 100 view width, and then we're going to say width is full for for a mobile screen, which is always just width full. A mobile screen small, so it's going to take up the whole thing most of the time. And then we're just doing the same thing again for view height. Height is full, so now everything's uniform. So this full pertains to this height full here, because we're making the height here 50 view height. So we're just saying this div is going to take up the whole height of 50 view height. This medium screen is going to be 100 view height, just like it is here. Width full is just width full. So hope that's making sense. Now we can take this and plug it in there. So we're just gonna keep it as commented out, but we can still work within it. So image class name. Actually, let's uncomment it because it's just a lot easier. So we're just gonna make it. For right now, the source is just gonna be this. So that way we don't, we're just gonna get this error. So image class name. Let's have IntelliSense work. Class name is equal to width full. So we're taking the whole width of this div right here that we already set it to what we want this div to be. So we're just taking, for this image, we're just saying the width is full based on what the div size is. And the height is full, once again, based on what the div size is. And now we're going to say key is equal to, where do we call it here? We said, in ours, we called it hero data. So we're going to say key is hero data. And key is just something that React uses anytime you use image. So it's gonna throw an error if you don't use it. So just say hero data dot, I believe I said in this one, ID. So hero data, what was key? Yeah, dot ID. So whatever the ID is, and remember to put a question mark just in case it doesn't have an ID. So question mark dot ID, and ID is given to you already in the API, so you don't really have to worry about that. Source, we already know what the source is. We're gonna plug that in later. And an alternate are for there's a word for it. I had it in my last video, but basically alternate are for those who use accessibility functions. That's what it's called, accessibility functions within the electronic device. So if it's an alternate for the image. So let's say they're not able to see the image. Alternate's going to tell them what the image is. So if we're going to say the alternate would be hero data, and we're going to say it's the title of the article. So we're going to name it the title of the article, and that's what the alternate would be. So yeah, we have that. Now we're done with this div, so we move on to the next div. And this div, oh sorry, I forgot to do something. So here we just have to put relative, and this has to do with positioning. So this everything within this div has a relative positioning. Why? Because we want to use something called position absolute, and we're on line 32 now. So position absolute. And if you guys want to do your own CSS, you can just skip this portion. It's not that serious if you don't want to do it, because you can always use yours. But for those who want to make it exactly the way I showed you, then you just go ahead and use my CSS. So now it's going to say position absolute. So we want this div to be absolute. So it's going to be taken away from the regular regular flow of the document for right now. So we're gonna say medium width of 40%, I believe I said. Yeah, 40%. And I'll explain this when we can see it here. It's not too hard to explain, so it's pretty easy once you see it. It's just because you can't see it right now, and that's because I'm trying to preserve the amount of times we can make a call to the API. To the server. So background gradient to bottom from black. Yep. So we're saying the background gradient. So we're going to the bottom from top to bottom, and we're going from the color black. So from top to bottom, we're going black until it thins out and it's no longer fully black. And you will see it once I'm done with this. So, and then H1 class name is text white. So we want our text to be white. We want our font to be bold. We want the text to be 3 vmin, 3 view, I believe it's like viewport minimum or view minimum or something like that. And then close this out, and then we're gonna call this hero data question mark we always use the question mark just in case the article is missing the component we're looking for. It's missing the tag or the category or whatever it is we're looking for. Each one. And now within this, so we already have that. So now within so we have this div, and within this div, we're going to create another div. So in here, we're going to create another div, and we're going to say the class name to this div is with full. And remember, each div that you nest is going off the criteria of the last div. So this with full pertains to the criteria given to the former the former div that we just used. So we're going to say padding top is 5 for a medium screen, and for a mobile screen, it's going to be padding top 2. We're going to flex it and justify around. And trust me, once we open it up, you're going to see exactly what we're doing. I understand not being able to see what you're doing sometimes throws you off, but in this case, it's kind of beneficial because you don't want to keep saving and saving and saving and keep calling these APIs, keep calling this, making requests to the server, keep making requests to the server, because unfortunately there is a cap on how many times we can do that. But we're almost done, so we're just creating those buttons right now. And the button is something that might change in the future. So if this does become an open repository, if you guys want it to be, I'll like put the link in the description. But if you want it to be, then there might be some changes later on, because I might make a change to the repository, to the document. So here we want to use something called link, and this is from React Router DOM. So the minute I click this link, link. So if I come up here, I want to import, let's make a space, link. And this is going to be from React Router DOM. Okay, so that's going to be this, where is it? A link. So that's what this link is. And we're going to say link to hero data question mark dot URL. So that means basically, where is it? When I click on read, I am going to that document. I'm going to like read that document. Wherever the URL to this document is where it's going to take me. So hero data.url, and then we're going to say target is equal to blank. And that means when I open it, when I click read, it takes me to another tab. It takes me to a blank tab. So that way we don't like lose this page. It just takes me to a whole different tab. And then relative is no opener. And I believe these are just like security parameters. No refer. So this is just to help with the secure, because if you don't put it in, it's going to tell you to put it in, just to help you. And we're going to have another, within this, we're going to nest another component called button. We're going to nest something else called button, and this is just to create the button. Let's see. And within this button, we're just going to call it read. Or read. Let's just make it capital. Yeah, we had a capital there. And then, like I was saying, with the, actually, let's just, why is this wrong? Hero data. Oh, okay. Equals. Yeah, hero data. So now, if I uncomment all this, right? Hero data is not defined. Something's wrong. It failed to compile 45. What 45? Yeah, hero data. Okay, let's take this part out, because that might be a problem. Use hero Choose info. Oh, sorry, it was hero info. I just kept saying hero data. So let's just change this to hero info. Hero info, hero info, and hero info. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it wasn't, so we're using hero info, not hero data. Yeah, I was like, what's going on? But yeah, so if you come back here, why is this wrong? Okay. So clear npm run start. What is the problem now? The problem is, remember when we use a link here from React Router DOM? When we use link here from React Router DOM, we have to go in and actually activate, quote unquote, React Router DOM. So what we want to do is come over to index.js, and it's like 2 seconds, and just hit browser router, and then put app between it to make it its child. And there you go. See, it's all set. So we just forgot to do this. Link won't work unless the browser router is telling it, like, basically you're working within the app. So that's it. So now if you come over here, uh, this is what we have so far. So let's just let's run through what we did in the CSS. So for the div, we said the width was full and the height was and on the medium screen and larger, the height is 100 view width. And as you can see, the height is 100. And I'm just gonna call this relative, so that works. So here's this, and it's right now it looks like it's cut off, and we're gonna fix that once we want to put in the nav. But right now this is what it is. And then when you inspect it, or yeah, basically inspect it, this is it on a smaller screen. So when you do that, you can see that all this stuff works. For absolute, while we used relative and absolute, we made everything relative within the div. And for absolute, that's because we wanted to move this you see where the background gradient goes from black to not black. We wanted to put the text within it, and this whole thing, the text within it, the read button, um, the actual the background gradient, we wanted to put it in this specific location. So for example, we wanted to say it's going to be on a medium screen. uh let's use a regular screen. So on a the width on a regular screen is going to be full. So that means this right here is going to be the full width of the screen. But in a reg on the bigger screen, this is only 40% of the screen. So it's only it only shows 40% of the width of this whole screen. So whatever we call the div of the width, it's only 40% of it. And the height is gonna, well, it's positioned at the bottom 10%. So if I change this to bottom 20%, it's gonna move up because it's 20% from off the bottom of the screen. So now, but we wanted at 10%. Like I said though, this is this is why I didn't want to like save it first, because it just keeps flipping through. But this is the original, this is my CSS for it. You can always go ahead and change the CSS. And then the link just means basically whenever I click this read function, this read button, it takes me exactly to that link, and it opens up in a new tab like I was saying. So that's pretty much it. It's CSS, you can always just play around with it. For justify around, when I have the next, let's say I have two buttons, as you can see, it's justified around. So those who understand what justified around means, that's what it means. That this is what it does. Uh, but yeah, so that's the CSS portion. So we pretty much got the hero part done. So the next part, what we're gonna do is create the Material UI portion and hopefully get to the search portion. So we'll be doing the Material UI for the 3 tabs: the business, sports, and science. And then we're gonna have a nav component with the search function, with the search input there. So we're going to be posting that to the back end. So hope you guys enjoyed part 1. If there are questions on it, you just go ahead and leave the questions in the comment section. I'll be back with part 2. And hopefully there's not a part 3, but if we have to make a part 3, we'll do a part 3. But I believe this should just be a part 1 and 2 series. Catch you guys later on the next one.